So I'm here today with Barry Ainsworth, a man of many parts, all the way from Liverpool right through to engineering Bohemian Rhapsody, perhaps the most famous pop song, perhaps the best pop song in the world. No pressure then. Good afternoon, Barry.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Now, you grew up sort of in the sort of area around the Cavern, didn't you? In the
Yeah,
Beatles. Tell us a little bit about how you started in Liverpool. And
well,
you were born, I imagine. And
I was born in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the first 21 years I lived in Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact I came to started my career in London on my 21st birthday. That was many, many years ago.
Mm.
Starting in Liverpool, during the day I worked for English Electric in Preston. And then in the evening I used to go to Liverpool to work in the Cavern. Not every evening, luckily. And what we did, there was an area where if a band played for free in the Cavern, then they would be given a recording of their performance. So we used to be upstairs making recordings on an old mixer. It was Vortexian. It was about this length, about that height, with 4 big knobs on, and I had 2 of those. It was all straight to mono.
That's the sort of white heat of technology at that time.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went to the Cavern, they'd only got 1 Vortexian mixer, so I persuaded them to get 2. And that was brilliant. So that gave me 8 channels, no less, to record a band and the audience and all that lot. We did quite a lot of recordings because what used to happen, a band would, any band from Liverpool, if they were from Liverpool, they'd get signed to a record company. So I did quite a lot of those, and the person that really helped me through that is a guy called Shel Tormey, who was a big producer in those days in London. And he suggested I came down to London and got a job in the studio. He found me the job in the studio, and I went to work for Pi Records. That was the start.
I've got lots of Pi records, and Donovan was on it one time.
Catch the Wind is one of mine.
Yeah.
Sunshine Superman, that's another one.
Oh yeah, I've got all those records. Fantastic. I never knew what Pi stood for, but never mind. It was someone's name, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
The owner, originally Pi was called Pi Nixler, and they were based in Great Cumberland Place. Sorry, in where the BBC is.
Oh.
In Portland Place.
Yeah.
It was. There's a studio called IBC. And that's where Pi Nixler started, and then eventually they were taken over by the Grade organisation and moved to ATV House in Great Cumberland Place.
Okay. And the sorts of acts you were engineering and
yes,
working with at that time?
There's a story there. What used to happen is there was a lot of fuss one year about backing tracks on television. Now, to be safe, the Grade organisation were the main holders of the Sunday night at the London Palladium.
This is Michael Grade, isn't it?
No, it was Luke.
Oh, sorry, his father. Sorry,
his father.
You can tell.
I remember there were occasionally meetings with Luke Grade.
Yeah. And
we used to go up to his office, and Michael was playing on the carpet. He was that young, so he's much younger than me. So that was an interesting part of time. But what happened is, after a couple of years, I started to do quite a lot of the more important recordings. Downtown was one of the first.
Oh, Petula Clark.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then it got to a stage where everything was being pre-recorded audio-wise at Pi. Then the tapes were sent over to the London Palladium for the concert on I think it was Sunday night at the London Palladium, was the television show. And
that was, before the internet for our younger listeners here.
Yes.
There was only 2 channels really, wasn't there?
BBC One, BBC. No,
BBC Two later. That was it. So you all had to watch it.
Yep.
Whether you liked it or not.
There was nothing else.
There was nothing else.
And so I was very fortunate to be able to make records with lots of very big stars and lots of American ones. Frank Sinatra, Nancy Sinatra. And a lot of what used to happen is that quite often a band would come in, we'd record their performance, then they said, do you want to make a record with us? So, yes, of course I do. And These Boots Are Made for Walking is one. I did an album called Nancy in London, and that had on it These Boots Are Made for Walking.
So, as well as doing all those classic acts, I mean, I know you've deviated, and we'll come on to this later on, with working with perhaps not orchestras, but things like hard rock band Deep Purple in their first incarnation.
That's right.
And famously, of course, you worked on their sort of things like Hush, I think, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. That was their
Tell me a
first
little bit
hit
about
record.
that. Yeah.
The producer was a guy called Derek Lawrence, and Derek and I were friends, and I'd come up with this idea of actually recording a drum kit in stereo, which no one had done. So it meant putting about half a dozen mics on the drum kit, and then placing them in the stereo image.
Right.
So that recorded the backing track. So you'd put John's organ on a pair of tracks, because what happened was that his organ, he used what was called in those days a Lowry loudspeaker system.
Yeah, rotating.
Which had a the bass end, because bass you can't localise bass as far as audio is concerned, but you can at the top end. So we used to put a mic at the bass end and two mics at the top end, one on each side of the thing, and that was spinning. But to help to make a more cohesive sound, we put reflective screens all around the loudspeaker system, and that created the organ sound for Deep Purple.
And that was before John Lord hit on the idea of doing the awful thing of plugging an organ into a Marshall stack to compete with Ritchie Blackmore.
Well, yes, because Ritchie always wanted everything louder
than everything else.
Which was fine, because he always did what he wanted, because he sort of, John Lord and they really ran the band between them.
Yeah, and I think they were a very clever pair of co-players and played off of one another. But there was often friction between Ritchie and the singer, Ian Gillan.
Yeah.
Of course, that friction actually makes a band brilliant at times, but also impossible at other times, because they've split up more times than many bands.
That was yes. I started to record Deep Purple at Pye Studios. Then I moved from Pye to Delane Lee.
Yeah, which is where they recorded a lot of their stuff. Yeah,
and I worked there, among others, with Mickey Most. So Lulu, Shout, that era, Donovan, that was Delane Lee, Pye to start with, then Delane Lee. So I managed to take lots of bands, not away from Pye, because I never tried to do that, but they came, and we made the recordings there, and Deep Purple, a lot of the Deep Purple stuff was done at Delane Lee.
What do you do as an engineer when, not necessarily Deep Purple, anyone's fighting out with their egos in a studio, and you've still got to get the job done?
You go along with it, and if you do get bands that are a bit of a nightmare, but on the other hand, in most cases I believe that they are right. They only want the best for their product.
So that tension is actually trying to move the whole thing upwards.
That's right.
Rather than just being...
And you used to let them to say get away with it is the wrong word, but you used to go along with it. Yeah. Because you could always sort it later. And we did.
Coming on to bands that were loud and use other devices to get their muse across, I know you produced, worked with and engineered Hawkwind around Silver Machine. That's with Lemmy, bless his soul. I mean, they may have been loud, but I imagine you're then working with people who are under the influence of certain substances. So how do you get the best out of people that are not all together?
All
together, exactly.
Patience.
Patience
is the only way.
Okay.
You wait for them. It's often said that musicians, most of them were stoned or taking illegal substances, but in fact, very few did on the actual recordings.
Yeah, because these things did cost money.
They did.
Yeah, and therefore you want to make the most of that time. I do recall going to see Hawkwind when I was 14 down the Odeon where I lived, and I had to run home because I thought it would be over now. They went on for 2.5 hours. All the songs were joined together by sort of blips and bubbles and noises, and there was blue haze of smoke at the front. It all smelled like a set of tomato plants.
Yes.
And I wondered what it was. My life was never the same. But I had at 10:30 I had to run home because I'd never been out that late. so I didn't inhale, as they say.
The punk era was a strange area. It was
because you didn't really do much of that, did you?
I didn't, because I
It wasn't
didn't
your
like
thing.
it very much,
Yeah.
and because I didn't really like it, I didn't go out to get the punk bands. But in fact, a few of them did come to me.
Yeah.
So we used to record virtually always under live conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing I found, that there was a habit at one stage, and there was spitting on stage.
Yes, I remember.
So I had to give my engineers gloves, so that, because the cables. Gloves.
Oh, I thought you.
No, gloves.
That would have been a
So
better idea.
It would, but the reason for that was because the cables were so filthy, covered with slime, and all of it was disgusting. That was one of the main reasons I didn't like recording punk stuff.
I had been spat at the Doctors of Madness and various other punk bands as my sort of early upbringing. It wasn't a pleasant experience. Not, I wasn't on stage, just the general being in the crowd. So it wasn't good for anyone.
No. The Marquee was a place, but
yes,
you know, there was a few of the others. There was another one, and I can't remember the name of it. There was a club that really was all punk stuff.
Oh, Dingwalls.
No,
Perhaps.
it was in Soho.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of it. And Richard Strange, was it?
Yeah, the Doctors of Madness.
That's
So I used to go and see them a lot at the Marquee and other places.
Well, he used to hire us to make recordings.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem was that the recording truck was very big.
Mm-hmm.
It was a trailer that was 46 feet long.
Yeah.
Now try get that through the streets of Soho.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible now,
Yeah.
but in those days you could.
Let us move on to sort of what I would want to call, in broad terms, innovation in sort of technology. And I know there's a couple of things you had to do, and it arises out of the fact when you move from not 3 tracks to 4 tracks, when you've got 24,
16 was in between.
Yeah, you've only got 2 hands, and there's 24 knobs to move.
Okay.
So you sort of innovated in terms of making it possible to arrange things so that the knobs would move themselves.
That's right.
Could you take us through that?
What that was, there was a company that made the desk called Trident, which also owned Trident Studios in Soho, but they had an engineering department that made mixers. And it was the days of when I had Psalm Studios, and we had a Trident desk. Then I found a company in America that did this thing. It was called Memory's Little Helper.
Mm-hmm.
It was made by a company called Alice. And but what it was an analog system, but the faders used to be electric. There was little electric motors on the
Like
faders.
servo motors.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they used to, we had the desk retrofitted where all the faders were motorised.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a box of electronics, and that fed to a 1 track of the multi-track tape.
So on 1 track there's these instructions, go up 1, go down 1,
That's right.
or whatever, just
That's
digital, well
Yeah.
not digital, but instructions to move the thing.
That's right, to move the fader.
Like a light dimmer.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly it, yeah. It
Right.
worked exactly like that, and that produced a motorised system. Now, one of the very first albums that was done using that was Bohemian Rhapsody,
Indeed.
because that was impossible to mix using your memory.
And
So Memory's Little Helper had to come into that.
I've even brought the
Hey!
album here, just so I happen to have it. But
Well.
it's a bit dirty. I think there was a sticker on there.
Yeah,
I should have
probably.
cleaned it up before I came, but this is a miracle of recording, isn't it? Because even 24 tracks now would be considered not many. People would go far further than that. But so you had this system to automate the mixing, which means you don't have to have 24
That's right.
pairs of hands.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that produces a lot more precision from the people who want it mixed, don't they?
Yes, and it takes about 3 times as long.
Yeah.
Because in the very early days of Memory's Little Helper, it wasn't exactly foolproof.
No.
The damn thing used to go wrong quite easily. And the worst problem was that if the tracks on the tape became a bit clogged up, then it would lose the signal, and if it did, it turned everything to 0.
So sudden fade.
Of everything.
Yeah.
So,
Of everything.
here we go again.
Right.
So it's back to square one. So that took quite a lot of time, and also because you got the precision, it could be, in theory, pretty accurate, to say the least. So I think from memory it took about 3 weeks to mix Bohemian Rhapsody.
And as is often believed, was it very much a democracy amongst most of them?
Most of the bands, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm talking about Queen in particular.
Yes.
They wrote a lot of these songs together, all credited together.
Yeah.
Did they all put into?
They did.
Yeah.
They all had their moments of glory, their moments of, yeah, let's do this.
I imagine John Deacon must have had more breaks. I think he's got 8 children. But that's another story for another time.
Well, they used to come into the studio round about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They booked the studio out totally for 3 months.
Yeah.
There was nothing else in the studio.
That would be hard to do these days.
It
You
used
have
to
to be a bit of a diva to get away with
It used
3
to drive
months.
me bananas
Yeah.
because I knew that we're losing work in the mornings.
Mhm.
And in the mornings we often did tracks with session musicians for advertising companies.
Mm.
Well, all that went down the tubes for a month or two.
Yeah, and I imagine they were relatively lucrative, so you're turning away work in order to do this opus.
Overall, I don't think we were that well paid for that album, but overall it's worked.
Mm.
It gave me the opportunity to be able to buy Trident.
Mm. And then you were involved in Psalm as well later on.
Psalm was first.
First, sorry.
Trident became it wasn't that I sold Psalm and started Trident, I didn't. I ran both.
Mm.
Then I bought a mobile recording unit, Mobile 1, and ran 3.
Yeah.
So I was more involved in that side of the business than my partner, who was a guy called Bill Foster in those days. And he did the day-to-day running of basically Psalm Studios, because he was a cutting engineer to start with. I found him at CBS Studios. I hated working on my own. I needed someone to feed off and someone to tell me I was crazy or wrong. That's fine, that's all right. And Bill was great at that. He wouldn't let me get away with anything.
So to conclude, what would you consider the most ingenious thing that Queen did in that time, in that 3 weeks?
I think it was a mix down of
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody. It was brilliant at the end of the day, but it was a lot of hard work to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I became, at the end of that project, because I became a bit disillusioned with rock and roll music.
Mm-hmm.
So I did then a lot more work with the classical side of it, using the mobile. I worked at the BBC. There was a recording area called the Paris Theatre.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember that.
I worked in there was an orchestra called the Larry Page Orchestra, and they did a programme every week from the Paris Theatre, and I was engineer on that.
I remember hearing it mentioned live from the Paris Theatre on the radio.
A lot of that was my stuff. And the Hippodrome at Golders Green, that was another studio that the BBC used.
Okay. And what are you doing now?
Now, I hung up my rock and roll ears about 10 years ago.
You've still got them.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're here.
They're here.
And I wanted to do more of the classical side and more freelance type of stuff. So basically sold out, sold the studios, and went on my own. And I set up various other facilities to make recordings, but I didn't own a studio, so I used to go into studios, hire a studio to record children's records. I made quite a lot of those, but they stretch from the late 60s right through to sort of the end of time sort of thing as far as I was concerned. And now, what am I doing now? Now I've got, I do 2 festivals a year. I do one in the summer, and last year we had about 22,000 people attend over a couple of days. And I do a theatre in the park, which is live Shakespeare in a park. And the nightmare with that, of course, is you rely totally on the weather. But that works, and we do quite well out of that, and I'm doing it again this year. And I'm just on the lookout at the moment for bands that I don't know about, so I've advertised for them.
Barry, from Downtown with Shakespeare to Bohemian Rhapsody, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.